But hey, it's baseball season, sort of, right? We had the big signing actually happen late last night. It will become official over the next couple of days. Juan Soto, the most coveted free agent since last year, Shohei Ohtani, is set to sign the richest contract in the history of Major League Baseball, approximately $750 million, as he is headed to the New York Mets. So Soto spends that season with the Yankees, takes them to the World Series, and then essentially decides to go for what looks like to be a decision between the Yankees and the Mets, at least according to what has been published. Now, it still remains to be seen as far as what the Mets will do elsewhere and how the Yankees will pivot from this. Right now, the Major League Baseball winter meetings are going on in Dallas. So naturally, we'll get more information over the next couple of days, how this ends up shaking out. And, obviously very surprising to see this amount of money given to two Major League Baseball players in back-to-back seasons, one in Shohei Ohtani and the other is Juan Soto. All right, college football playoff is now set. The big story coming out of the weekend was that fantastic ACC Championship between Clemson and SMU, which essentially, with Clemson winning in the last second of the game, knocked Alabama out of the 12-team playoff. So we are headed now toward what could be the most exciting playoff we've seen in years. We go from 4 to 12, as you can see. The number 1 seed is Oregon, followed by Georgia at number 2 after winning the SEC Championship. And a lot of projections have those two teams facing off in the final. But we know better. Stranger things have happened in college football. And so a long time to go before we get there. December 20th is the first round of the college football playoff, and bowl season is upon us as well. All right, Chargers, Chiefs. I mean, do we even need a script at this point? You know how this is going to go. The Chiefs are going to win in like the last minute of the game, and that's what ended up happening. A field goal going through off a doink. AFC West is now the Kansas City Chiefs. Pretty dull game, all things considered. 19-17 the final, as Kansas City wins yet another AFC championship. And really the story for the Chiefs all season long have been these last-second wins. It seems like it just comes down to the end. The Chiefs make a play, and they somehow capture a very short victory. You don't want to bet the Chiefs against the spread. They're not having a good year there, especially as favorites. Let's hear from Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Reid having confidence in his kicker.
Yeah, so I mean, I've trust in Matthew, so I was good with where we were. Percentages are pretty high. I know we've won a game in that same situation on the opposite end, so I get it. But he's a solid kicker, so I wasn't too worried about it. Once we got down in there, now to get down in there was a nice job by our guys. To that play that Pat and Kelsey made right there at the end was something. So that's not quite the way it was drawn up.
What that play was?
Yeah, it was a naked, so with the back on a slide, and they zoned it off, and Pat had it in his hands, which is important, and on the move, which is important. He does some good things with that.
Yeah, I think just got to be able to hit some of these explosive plays. I think that's probably the biggest thing. Once you do that, it opens up everything else. And it seems like we stall out on drives and little things. And I've said that kind of all year long, but it is close. I truly believe we are closer than we were this year at this point. And it's just about finding a way to prove it on the football field on Sundays. We'll play every day of the week, it seems like, the next few days, but on game days. And then we can kind of go into the playoffs with some momentum.
Right now, the Chiefs have that momentum. They just keep on winning. Meanwhile, the Los Angeles Rams season continues. They beat the Buffalo Bills 44-42 and now have a shot to make it through the NFC West division title. The Bills are 3.5-point favorites. Total was 49.5, and of course, this one flew over the total. 44-42 the final. Record days for a couple of different players. The first was Puka Nacua, who had over 170 receiving yards and rushed for a touchdown. He was phenomenal. Josh Allen, though, was the only player in NFL history to rush for 3 touchdowns and throw for 3 touchdowns in the same game. And if you are playing fantasy football, 50 fantasy points for Josh Allen yesterday. If you had him, you won. If you played against him, you probably lost. Sean McVay somehow got a win, though, despite all of those touchdowns from Josh Allen, thanks to his high-powered offense.
Okay, guys, great win by our team. Really proud of these guys. They just did a good job of continuing to, make plays. I thought Matthew had great command offensively. I thought we were able to run the football. Our offensive line did an excellent job. for us to be able to maintain possession the way that we did. And our defense got enough stops. Obviously, the punt block for a touchdown was huge. It was a great job by Chase Blackburn. Jake Hummel gets the block. Hunter Long picks it up for his first career touchdown. But a lot of different things that took place throughout the course of that game. But that's an excellent team. I mean, you see Josh Allen is an alien. Some of the stuff that he can do and the things that he can create, we knew he was capable of that. He's shown that. It's why he is, as well respected and regarded in this league as he is. It's all deserved and earned. But our guys found a way to just make enough plays to be able to come out on top. I'm really proud of this group. And whether you look at it as fortunately or unfortunately, we got to be able to move on. Guys are getting recovered right now. We've got a great opportunity against the Niners. We know what a great opponent they are, and we got to be ready to roll on Thursday night against them.
Yeah, big game coming up for the Rams, of course. Probably a must-win game against the Niners because San Francisco also won. We'll get to them here in just a minute. Let's start again with the NFC West, or continue, I guess that's the best way to say it. Seattle stays on top of the division, heavily favored now to come out of the West with a division championship. They throttle Arizona by a final of 30-18. Cleveland went up early on Pittsburgh with Jameis Winston and company. That didn't last. The Steelers won 27-14 the final. Buccaneers, by the way, 6.5-point favorites. They beat the Raiders 28-13 as Tampa has now won three games in a row. We'll hear from Baker Mayfield coming up later. Boy, close game between the Eagles and Carolina Panthers. In fact, the Panthers had a chance to win this in the end. Xavier Legette dropped a pass that would have given them the win. Eagles were 13.5-point favorites, 22-16 the final. My pick of the year in the Bears, that went up in flames. San Francisco crushes them 38-13. Kirk Cousins, no touchdowns, more interceptions, and their defense is giving up points for free. Feels like a gift. 42-21, Minnesota beat Atlanta yesterday. I was at the Dolphins and Jets game yesterday. The game went to overtime. Very exciting. 32-26 the final. Dolphins were 6 or 5.5 in some spots. Giants had a 35-yard game-tying field goal block. They lost to the Saints, but they covered 14-11. Jacksonville goes on the road and beats Tennessee. And tonight, Monday Night Football, we've got Cincinnati taking on Dallas, if you dare watch, total 49.5. Meanwhile, Alabama Crimson Tide going and pulling out all the stops. Their athletic director basically saying they're going to have to look at how they schedule non-conference games in the future after being let out of the college football playoff. He said it'll be evaluated. Alabama will play against Michigan in their upcoming bowl game. Purdue has hired Barry Odom to try and turn around their program. Kyle Whittingham has decided he's going back to Utah for his 21st season. And what is old is new again. Scott Frost, who led the UCF Knights to an undefeated season a couple of years ago, is now back on a 5-year deal with UCF after having a tough time at the University of Nebraska. Other signings in Major League Baseball, it's the Dodgers. Who else? Michael Conforto signs a 1-year, $17 million contract. He will play the outfield in case Teoscar Hernandez leaves via free agency. Blake Trinan, the Dodgers, sign a 2-year, $22 million contract. Willie Adames signs a record-breaking contract for the Giants, 7 years, $182 million, as he will play the infield in San Francisco. And Tyler O'Neill is staying in the American League East. He goes from Boston to Baltimore, 3 years, $49.5 million. In the NBA, the MVP favorite is Nikola Jokic for good reason. Another huge game for him yesterday. 48 points for the Joker as they beat Atlanta. The Lakers, without LeBron James, get a win over the Blazers. Golden State gets back on track. 30 from Steph. Warriors beat the Wolves. And tonight, one game in the NBA, the Knicks will take on the Toronto Raptors, with New York being 6-point favorites in that matchup. Great to be back with Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report. We'll dive into the latest in the state of Texas. Could we get sports betting there anytime soon? We'll find out. Pat, great to have you back here on Newswire once again. And I don't have a watch on here, but time, I was going to point to my watch, which I don't have. Time is ticking here in Missouri. They got legalized sports betting. You know, this idea that sports betting would come to Missouri after the legalization in November, you know, some talk, oh, maybe we can get this going in December. Well, that's not going to happen. I don't think January is going to happen either. So what's the update here?
Yeah. So, Craig, I promise there will be a time we don't have to talk about Missouri. But, I mean, it feels like we've been talking about it since we started doing this almost 3 years ago, and they've been trying to legalize it. And I think we're coming to the end. As you know, as you just mentioned, it did pass during the election last month by a very, very slim margin. So there's been thoughts that there would be a recount, and that maybe it doesn't pass, actually. But thankfully for the industry, it has been certified and has officially been passed at the ballot. So this is a long journey. You and I have been talking about it for 3 years. First, when it was Missouri-Kansas race, and Kansas got it done and launched in 2022. And it was the whole border war, and we thought, oh, geez, there's no way Missouri's going to let them launch it without them launching it. But sure enough, here we are almost 3 years later. Actually, 3 years later. Nope, not, it's 2024. Geez, jumping ahead of myself there, Craig. But almost 3 years later, and still nothing. Now, to your point, once it was passed in November, a lot of people were very excited. Oh man, we can get it off the ground right away. Of course, that's not how it works. The regulatory agencies still have a lot of work to do to kind of get the licensing in order, the applications ready. The thought right now is, as we're hearing, is the Missouri Gaming Commission will get emergency application rules out in January, so the applications can be submitted and get that ball rolling. And it sounds like they want to get off the ground by late spring, early summer. Of course, that's not a great time to launch because there's not a whole lot going on for sports books. But hey, it's better than having to wait until 2026.
Yeah, no, we got to get it going soon here because we're going to get into the next state that I know next year you and I are going to be talking about this, just like Missouri, every week. It's sports betting in Texas. And I find it really interesting here, Pat, that a lot of people cannot bet in Texas, but they sure are trying, according to your article over at Legal Sports Report.
Yeah, they're really trying. GeoComply recently released some new numbers. What is it? It's 1.48 million users in November attempted to place a bet in a legal sports book in a different state, probably Louisiana would be my guess for most of them. And of course, GeoComply blocks that because they're doing their job. But that was an 87% increase from the last year. So, I mean, obviously the momentum is kind of growing. People are hearing sports betting. Oh, people are talking about sports betting in Texas. Maybe we can do it. Of course, then they go and try and then they can't, and then they probably get upset. Does this mean a whole lot for the chances next year? Unlikely, as we've talked about ad nauseum, and will continue to do so. Because just like Missouri is the latest state to launch or to be ready to launch, which we haven't had in a while, and the industry really wants it. Well, Texas is potentially the largest potential handle in the U.S., and they really want to get their feet in there. However, of course, in 2023, we had a bill to legalize sports betting that was passed by the House. So great. That's great. But the Senate, it didn't even get a vote. And that is because Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, super anti-gambling expansion. Same thing is going to happen this year. They only meet in the legislature every other year, every odd year. So 2025 is the next one. And Dan Patrick will still be in his position, still playing roadblock. So 2025 is unlikely, but that doesn't mean this momentum, the people trying to bet, the legislators who do want to keep building, the industry continues to pour resources in. I know we talked last week, I think, about Miriam Adelson this year pouring $13 million into political action committees to try to get more people on board. And I think this is all just continuing the momentum build. Eventually, more and more legislators will see my constituents want this. We need to do it. I mean, it's an insane amount of people in Texas that I can imagine want it, and an insane amount of money between the Adelsons and Jerry Jones and Mark Cuban and everyone. So, yeah, it's just something that I think we're going to have to wait till at least 2027 to actually have really positive news for the industry. But I think we're going to see a lot of like little inches forward in 2025.
All right, let's close it out with another state that would love to have sports betting, and they actually have a border. Like, for example, Jacksonville is so close to Georgia, people can just drive over the border, make their bets in Florida, then go back and live in Georgia. We saw that with New York and New Jersey for a long time. I know that's happening. How about legalizing Georgia? Any shot of that coming next year?
I think Georgia is one of the two likely states to actually get it done in 2025, along with Minnesota. And I think, again, just like Missouri, you and I have been talking about both of these states since we started doing this. I mean, Georgia's been very close a couple of times. Minnesota's been very close a couple of times. And I think heading into 2025, Georgia is saying, all right, we need to get this done. I mean, there's enough of support. It's a bipartisan support. Last year in the Senate, both parties came together. We're like, this is a great bill. Let's do it. However, there's a couple people in there who want a constitutional amendment, which then makes people fall off because they're like, that's a much harder lift. But anyway, one of the sponsors, Brandon Beach, he wrote an op-ed in the Atlanta Constitutional Journal saying, you know what? The swing voters who changed the state from Biden in 2020 to Trump in 2024 want sports betting. And that means, I guess he assumes, most voters want it as well. And he singled out Latino voters, young male Latino voters, who are apparently generally more apt to be sports bettors, as well, as they shifted a giant margin from Biden to Trump in 2024. So just a kind of an interesting anecdote from him in this op-ed, calling for his legislators to get it done and take away the black market and push it into the light and see what happens there. So again, Georgia, you and I, between Texas, Georgia, Minnesota, I think you're going to be sick of me coming on here, whether it's you, I don't know, maybe you like talking to me still, or the listeners, they might get sick of me, but you know what? We got to do the news.
Yeah. The other thing, Pat, before we close out just this conversation is, and I know we don't talk about it that often, but it seems like Florida has created this model for California to follow. I mean, I don't know if that's the way it's going to end up going, but I have a feeling when it does, that could be another topic for us.
No, I think it definitely will be, and I think we'll start hearing more and more about that soon. I think the tribes are really kind of coming together and trying to think or build on what Florida did, and I think you're right. I think that's something that California particularly will be looking as an option, and yeah, just like Texas, actually probably more so than Texas, the industry wants in, so they're going to be willing to play ball to figure out how to get in there, and that is through the tribes, realistically.
Understood. All right, Pat, great to catch up with you once again. Have a great rest of your week. Thanks for coming on Newswire.
Thanks as always, Craig.
All right, Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report. We had some really big games yesterday in college basketball. In case you missed it, the number one team in the country has lost again. How about this? Kansas loses this time to Missouri, who we just spent so much time talking about. 76-67, the final. Mark Mitchell scored 17 points in the game. Also, number 25, UConn goes on the road to Austin. They beat the Texas Longhorns 76-65. UCLA hands Oregon its first loss of the season on a game-winning 3, and Creighton, off to such a nice start in college basketball, has lost one of their better players. Pop Isaacs is going to have hip surgery and going to miss the remainder of the season. He was averaging 16 points, 4.8 rebounds, and 3.9 assists through 8 games.